What up, homies? Okay, today I'm going to take you on a deep dive into the Gutenberg Editor for WordPress. And the reason I want to do this is I want to show you how using the editor at all is setting you up for failure in the future. And beyond that, I'm going to illustrate how when you use the Gutenberg Editor, it is actively destroying your content database, okay? And so a lot of people don't know that this is how WordPress works, but WordPress's main responsibility is not like the design of your website or anything like that. WordPress's primary responsibility is your content, and specifically saving and retrieving your content from a database that runs on your web server. Now, it is important that your content have as little information as possible about like styling, any sorts of directives for outcomes that could only be interpreted by WordPress, for example, or by a theme or by a plugin, this kind of thing. And there's always a tightrope, sort of balancing act, I guess you might say, that we are dealing with there, because you got to have some stuff in there. Like, for example, you might have a line of text that you want to be centered, something like that. And so that information needs to be present in the content so that if you loaded it into a new system, maybe not in WordPress, for example, just somewhere else, somewhere else in the future, some of that information you would want to be retained. But if you have too much of that, then your content is polluted with information that's not going to be relevant to it in the future. So then it becomes waste. And sometimes that waste can make it very difficult to make changes in the future. And this is really the problem. You don't want your content database to be polluted in such a way that if you want to do something new in the future, really like 90% of your effort becomes like cleaning up this mess that you created in the past. So this is something I think about every time I deal with my website or create pages, all this kind of thing. I am always thinking about future flexibility and agility, because I know I will be making changes. Now, this may not seem relevant to you right now. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know that these cycles come up over and over again. And I know I've seen firsthand, this is no joke, your future flexibility can be affected to a degree that you probably cannot imagine. You literally may not be able to get the outcomes you want in the future. You may not be able to afford them. You could be making mistakes every day right now that will cost you tens of thousands of dollars in the future to undo. And if it's not an outright cost for you, if it's something you want to take on yourself, I'm talking hundreds of hours of cleanup and maintenance to undo a lot of these problems that Gutenberg creates. So with that huge disclaimer out of the way, with that background information, I'm going to show you exactly the stuff about Gutenberg that drives me nuts and that is a problem, and that I want to show you the stuff that you are going to want to avoid after you watch this video. All right, let's dive in. So I created a little sample page here that I made with the Gutenberg Editor, and it's just a basic page. The theme I am using here is called Focus. This is just a super basic installation, so it has no customization at all, but Focus also does not do anything specific to accommodate Gutenberg styles. So like the way that this outputs the basic text I'm okay with, but I dislike like this heading, not enough spacing above and below. The font size used here is sort of arbitrary and based on whatever WordPress serves by default for the Gutenberg Editor styles. So they're called block styles. And, like this drop cap here, for example, is way too big for the content. This doesn't have proper spacing above and below it on this subheading. So it's just not right. And so this is really how Gutenberg is largely used out in the wild. People just accept these styles that WordPress spits out, and they're not calibrated to your site at all. Okay? Now, themes can go the extra mile here and work with some of this stuff, but it's a convoluted mess. And it's really neither here nor there, because this is, besides being annoying and like just lame, this is not really the problem at all, even though it is sort of a problem. It's just an annoyance. But the real problem is under the hood, and you are not going to like what you see. So the first thing I'm going to do is go look at the HTML source of this page, and I'm going to show you a couple stuff that gets me going, and then we'll dive into the really bad stuff. So here is the HTML source of this page, and what I want you to notice, you see this white space here? Here's where the content starts, but there's some white space before it. There's a big white space gap between these paragraphs. There's some BR tags that have been thrown in here. Like, I didn't put those in there. A couple of BR tags, those shouldn't be there. That's not something, here's some more. This is not stuff that really should exist inside content. But let's look at this even farther. Like, let's take a closer look here. So this ends with, let's talk about the consequences. We'll go back over here, and I look at this, I see two paragraphs. I see paragraph 1, and I see paragraph 2. Oh, and paragraph 3. So I see 3 different paragraphs there. But the way the Gutenberg editor has interpreted this is those 3 paragraphs are treated as one paragraph, and then it's thrown in these extra BR tags, which shouldn't even be there. This is extra HTML that shouldn't be there. This is not really a standardized way of doing it. This is not correct. This is not the way the markup should be. Now, you can say, well, they're still figuring things out with the Gutenberg editor, and this is just kind of a stopgap, step in the process here, and maybe they'll clean it up. Maybe it'll get better. Or maybe this doesn't matter. But I'm going to show you a different page with a different outcome that's exactly the way the HTML should be, and it's just better. So let's take a look at that. So here's a little page I just made for this example using the old classic editor in WordPress. We've got an image, it's out to the right, paragraph, paragraph, subheading, paragraph, yada yada. Now let's look at the HTML source for this. Okay, here's where the content starts. Here's the whole thing. No extra white space. Each paragraph tag in the HTML source encompasses exactly one paragraph. It's more WYSIWYG to me when I read this, like, okay, there's a paragraph, there's a second paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 5 paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 paragraphs in the content. So there's a one-to-one correspondence between the tags you see in the HTML and the results we get right here. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pop into the editors and show you how both of these pages, the one created with Gutenberg, the one created with the classic editor, I'm going to show you how they look in the editor and also how they're going to look in your content database, the information they will contain, and we can compare and contrast those. I do want to look at one more thing. I want to see how the Gutenberg page handles the delivery of that tag right there. So this is not considered a heading, okay? I consider this a subheading, which I normally delineate with H2, H3, or H4 HTML tags. And when you go into the editor, which we'll do in a little bit, if you choose heading 1, 2, 3, or 4, in the classic editor at least, this has always spit out H1, H2, H3, H4 tags. But as we can see, I wanted to make something bigger inside Gutenberg. I did what I thought was the most intuitive thing to get a subheading like this, and yet the output is just a generic paragraph tag with this HTML class. First of all, it's verbose, has large font size. Whew, boy. Okay, that's not what I want. I'd rather it be like this page over here where we have a subheading and then a smaller subheading. This one is an H2, is the larger one, and the smaller one is an H3. That is how HTML is supposed to work. This is normal. This is an abomination. I don't even know what this is. Okay? So we see that there's some issues on the surface. Let's dive in and take a look at what's really going on here. So here's the Gutenberg editor. Here's the way, I crafted this one page using just the basic stuff. I typed in a title, I typed some stuff, I specified a drop cap. Gutenberg seemed to just arbitrarily choose where one paragraph ends and another one begins. I didn't specify anything specific to say, okay, make this the end of the first one, make this the beginning of the second one, end of the third. I didn't do any of that, but that's how the interpreter for this thing chose to split up my post. And like I said, it ended up with 3 paragraphs in one. There's some weird, wonky stuff going on there, okay? So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn on, pardon, the Classic Editor plugin, and we'll be able to look at these posts in a new way. All right, so let's do that real quick. We're going to activate it. We're going to head back over to our pages, and we're going to see page made with Gutenberg. Let's check it out. Okay. This is so bad, fam. This is so bad. This is hard to look at. So here's this one, all right? So we see some things. I'm going to open up this other one. Let's do this. Let's edit it. Okay, here is the other one. All right. Now let's flip over here. I want you to notice some things here. You got these interesting little tags. These are this syntax of this little construction and this ending construction. These are historically known as HTML comments. So you can put stuff like this in an HTML document. It will not appear when the site renders, but this syntax is used for HTML comments. In this case, Gutenberg doesn't use them that way. They use them as opening and closing tags for blocks. All right? And so this first section, which we've already discussed, is actually 3 paragraphs. It's treated as a single block paragraph. It's got this cryptic drop cap true declaration to say that it has a drop cap, and it also has this class included to say that it has a drop cap on the first letter. And so this stuff, this is the problem. These tags are the problem. These tags, and even these BR tags that I've already highlighted for you, and even, you know, frankly, even the paragraph, the opening and closing paragraph tags, and these classes, all of this stuff is cruft. What cruft is stuff that appears that doesn't need to be there. It's wasteful. Now, let's flip over to that other post, and you'll notice here's an image tag. Paragraph starts here. It just ends with raw spaces. There's not actually HTML tags included until we get down here to the H2 subheading, and I'm just adding some space here for clarity so we can see what we're looking at. But the bottom line here is that there's as few HTML tags as possible, and the image tag is very straightforward because it is specifying an image. I'm okay with that. I'm also okay with stuff like H2, H3 because it says, hey, this particular snippet of text, if we were to take this content, move it over to a whole new platform, Ghost or some other content management system that's not WordPress, I could still have this content render in an H2, H3 subheading immediately with no modifications. In other words, the basic structural integrity of my content would still be in place when I transported this over to a new system. However, if we were to attempt to do such a thing with Gutenberg, all this crap would be included in the content that you moved over. It would have to be scrubbed to some extent, for sure. Like, these would not appear in the resulting markup, but they would still be there, okay? They would be on your web page, you know, printing out in your Ghost HTML markup, for example, and thereby increasing the size of the page. But beyond that, the stuff that actually appears in the hard-coded tags, this will be there. Class equals has drop cap. These faulty paragraph opening and closing paragraph tags that don't really delineate a proper paragraph. These BR tags. So it's just extra crap. All sorts of extra crap. And zero integrity. This P class has large font size. You would have to create a new HTML or CSS class on your new site and accommodate that class name specifically and have it render as an H2 or H3 or whatever you actually wanted it to be. So you would have to create some code to adapt it over. So there is no structural integrity here. None. Literally none. This is not a transportable structure into anything else. This is so short-sighted that as an engineer, this is baffling to me that this even exists and is popular now. It's popular because this is what you're being force-fed, and nobody like me is sitting here showing you what a disaster it truly is. Okay, so part of the deal with engineering is flexibility, portability, not shooting yourself in the foot, taking very efficient actions, not including a bunch of crap that cannot be undone easily later. This is lazy. This should not be the case. So people who have now crafted, 100 pages or posts with Gutenberg now have a situation with their content database that's completely untenable. If you were to go back and change your design, make any sort of corrections at all, or want to improve your HTML structure so you can rank better in search engines, so you can have pages that render a little bit faster, a little more cleanly, so that you can apply CSS styles that don't need to be 800 miles long. Instead, you can have like a brief little block of customizations that handles everything. Patterns get followed. Stuff is efficiently applied. Under this setup with Gutenberg, all of that is impossible. All of that is impossible. You're just going to have a ton of crap to wade through. If I want to make this page not garbage now, here's what I got to do. So we're going to do it together. I'm going to undo all the crap, and we're going to see how long it takes. Okay, that's not right. This is a closing p tag. We got to get rid of these. We're going to space that out. We're going to actually don't even need the opening and closing ones. We're just going to eliminate that. Has drop cap. Don't like it. So this is what you would have to do to clean up the content in your database. Otherwise, these things, these tags, and the cruft is going to be present in your content database forever. It's not going to be naked and clean like this one. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. So you want to clean it up? This is what you got to do. You go in and start fixing all these little things that suck. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here. But you see the deal. You see now, you've got all this junk. You want junk all over your content? And there's no tools that make this easy to unravel. And there's lots of little idiosyncratic situations, especially depending on the functionality from Gutenberg that you choose to deploy in your content. There are so many little idiosyncrasies here. I'm telling you, there's no way to unravel this mess. The only solution is to stop using Gutenberg and stop ruining your content in this manner. You have to stop using it because it is actively ruining your content. You know, I maybe take a long-term view about this sort of thing because I've had to go back through the content on my various websites for so many years now and bring things up to speed, eliminate largesse similar to this that I have produced in the past because I didn't have good foresight. But now I've done this so many times. Like, I have great foresight. I know exactly how this works over time. I know how screwed you are if this is what your content database looks like. You can't port this over to a new structure. Your pages are always going to be slow. You're always going to have this reliability. You're going to have to rely on Gutenberg, and Gutenberg is slow, clunky, can't quite give you the outcomes you want. I've already showed you how the HTML source that it spits out is garbage. You know, this is garbage. It's garbage. There's no getting around it. Gutenberg is trash. And it is, but the worst part about it is, it's not I want to be critical of Gutenberg. I don't want to see your content databases getting completely smashed by bad software. And that's exactly what is happening here. And one more point, I run some forums to go with my software, Focus for WordPress, the Focus WordPress theme. And I deal with this all the time. I deal with people who have been using the Gutenberg editor and they've got all this HTML cruft and crap in their posts, and they have unintended consequences when styles and stuff don't apply the way that they're anticipating, or that certain things don't look the way that they're anticipating, and that's because, you know, they're expecting a section heading, and it doesn't have heading tags. It's got this weird cryptic, has large font size sort of delineation, because it's a crappy HTML structure. It's not right, and that's why it doesn't work. And so when my customers get frustrated, and when people I'm trying to help are getting frustrated, it's like, man, it's tough to watch, to know that just the editor you were using unknowingly just completely shot you in the foot and ruined what you were trying to do. So that's no way to live, obviously. And so I felt like I had to make this video to really illustrate for you guys what the actual consequences of using the Gutenberg editor truly are. So my recommendation is to cease using it immediately. If you haven't already created dozens and dozens of pages that are going to require refactoring here inside your, and I'm using the text editor, by the way. That was to illustrate this stuff. You could also use the visual editor. But you see how that does its own sort of thing as well. But the bottom line is you need to cease using that immediately. My recommendation is to switch and use the Classic Editor plugin only. This will disable Gutenberg and make the Classic Editor with the text and the visual mode your primary means of composing a post. And the reason you want to do that is simple. you want to keep the information in your content database as clean as possible and free of idiosyncratic styling stuff. Here's the thing about structure. Your content is structure, and your actual design and the output of your pages is style. Style is transient. It is going to change over time. You'll want to change your design at some point. You'll change the components of your website. You'll integrate different plugins. You'll do different things. And therefore, you will need to be flexible to adapt to whatever new environment you're going to be in. If your content, your structure, contains cruft that speaks to the style, well, now your content, your structure, and your style, they're dependent upon one another. They're locked together now. And so now when you move one thing, you also have to move another. That becomes very cumbersome, very hard to manage. It's way more expensive in every way than separating the two as much as possible. You do not want too much, really you don't want any styling information in your content database. Now I maintain, like I opened with a qualifier here, I said, if one paragraph needs to be centered, well, you might have p class equals center in there, something like that. That's a minimal level of structure and style being sort of conflated. But you want to keep it to like a minimum as much as possible. You certainly don't want to do what Gutenberg is doing and just trash up all your content and create this linkage between structure and style that you can't break, or that requires a tremendous Herculean effort to make right. Okay? So take it from me. Use the classic editor, keep your styles clean, and that way when you want to change designs in the future or you want to do different things, you will have the flexibility to be able to do that quickly and cheaply without it being a thing that makes you want to tear your hair out, okay? Take it from me, fam. No more Gutenberg. Classic editor for the win. I'll see you next time.